welcome to another episode of Low End Box TV. In this episode, we're going to show you how to save hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, at least if you want to host your own top-level domain. Let's talk about that real quick. On the internet, you could register a domain name, example.com. You'll pay $10 or whatever it is. And of course, it could be .com, .org, .de, .jp, whatever, different country codes, different organization codes. So if you register example.com, you own that domain, but it is under the .com top-level domain. What if you wanted to have your own top-level domain? We've seen an explosion of these. If you go back to the start of the internet, there was .com, .org, .net, some country codes. That was about it. In the last 10 years, there's just been an avalanche of new domains. .party, .shop, .design, .rich. That's one that's out there, .rich. It exists solely so you can say, hey, I'm rich. I could afford whatever the outrageous registration fee is for that top-level domain. But what if you wanted to start your own? Well, it's an expensive process. You're talking several $100,000 to go through the paperwork, pay the fees, and then of course you have all the technical requirements. And because you're kind of bolting it onto the internet, there are some, you can't just run it on a laptop in your home, right? You've got to meet the requirements and the, I guess the scalability, whatever you'd say, to actually host that domain. There have been some kind of vanity top-level domains. I think these are usually done by large companies, .Google or something like that, right? .Microsoft. Just for the cost, I'm sure, eventually there will be some celebrity who registers, I don't know, .LeBron or something, I don't know. But for you and I, kind of the average person on the internet, it is completely out of our cost ability. But what if we are working at home? What if we're in a private environment? Can we set up our own top-level domain? Absolutely, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. So the situation is I've got some VMs at home. I was looking for a domain to use just for my home VMs. I could certainly take a domain that I have and either subdomain it, create example.domain.com, or just repurpose it, or go register a new one. But I thought, maybe I'll do something a little bit different here. Maybe I will set up my own top-level domain, and then I can carve it up however I want. I can create subdomains on it, etc. Is there a real need to do this? Of course not. It's fun. It's neat to pick out anything you want and create a top-level domain, point all your stuff at it, manage it however you want, but it's certainly not necessary. Now, I'm going to show you how to do it today with DNS. However, you could also do this with hosts files. So if you just went into your, here for example, I've got a couple different VMs. Here, let's just go to this one. If I go to Etsy hosts here, I could, create, 192.168.1.100 and call it, example.lowendbox. Now, if I go and I do an NS lookup, actually, I'm not sure NS lookup would do it. Yeah, because it's actually going to try and do an NS lookup. But I could ping it, for example. It's not going to resolve, but it's going to try and ping it, right? Or, of course, I typed the IP. That's not what I meant to do. I wanted to type example.lowendbox. It does find it, right? It looks in the files and finds that example.lowendbox is on 192.168.1.100. So that will work, but it's kind of clunky to go and do that on all your servers. And then if you add an entry in DNS, you've got to go to all your servers to update it, etc. So we're not going to take that approach. By the way, if you're curious, just to read up a little bit, the nsswitch.conf file, which is an Etsy, tells the system how to look up hosts. And so for the hosts, there are other things, protocols, services, all this kind of stuff, rarely used. This file is rarely touched. But for hosts, we say, hey, look up in the files, Etsy hosts first, and then look in DNS. So that's just a little bit of trivia for you, not necessarily relevant to our discussion today. What we're going to do today is we're going to set up a DNS server that will resolve .lowendbox. So that would allow me to create a different hosts on .lowendbox. And in fact, I'm going to create two zones. One's going to be prod.lowendbox and one's going to be test.lowendbox, because of course I have this vast enterprise with all these different complicated testing and production facilities. Now, okay, this is just an example. So what we're going to do is we're going to use named. Now there's different DNS servers out there. There's named, there's Unbound, there's, which is kind of a clever pun, there's NSD. And in fact, if you're just doing simple DNS, I would recommend NSD, and we did a tutorial on that earlier. But for this one, we're going to use named. And I want to give a shout out to Frank Z, who is a Low End Talk member. He posted kind of a recipe. I've adapted it here, works great. So I'm going to borrow some of Frank Z's work and show you how this is done. So first thing we're going to do, actually, let's do an apt-get update. Make sure that our mirrors and whatever are up to date. Temporary failure. Oh, yeah, I know why. Because I was messing with my resolve conf there. And I'm on the wrong server. Here's the DNS. Let's go here. Okay, we look good there. So let us apt-get update. All right, so we're up to date, and now we're going to do an apt-get install bind 9. Bind stands for the Berkeley Internet Name Daemon. It has been around for 1 million years. I remember managing bind at least 1998, possibly. Actually, no, I take it back. It was more like 1994, 1995. So, I mean, it's been around a long time. Like I say, I think NSD is a simpler choice for most people and for what most people want to do. But if you want the full, everything you could ever do with DNS serving, really named is what you probably going to end up in. There are others though. So here I've got, after I install it, we're going to go into etc bind, and that's where you'll find the basic files. Now there's stuff already set up here, and I should mention, by the way, I am in, what is this? This is Debian 11.2. Okay, so depending on what version of Linux, or even which version of Unix, if you're using BSD or something else, the files might be in different locations. They might be in etc named, they might just be in etc. There may not be a subdirectory. But I think in general what I'm doing here, you'll be able to figure it out. So in Debian likes to have a single top file, named.conf, and then split everything out. This is like a Debian, I don't know what you'd say, kind of a cultural thing. They do the same thing for MySQL. They do the same thing for a lot of different packages that are installed. So there's a master, or I shouldn't say a master, a top level file called named.conf. And it includes, with these directives here, include the options, etc. So I'm not going to touch named.conf, we don't need to, but let's look at named.conf.options. Okay, so out of the box, it's just got some basic stuff. I'm actually going to turn off IPv6. I don't really need it for this example. But I'm going to put in, and in fact, I'm going to actually copy and paste here from my notes some lines here. Okay, so let's just go over these real quick. First of all, the subnet I'm using is 192.168.52. It's in the private 192.168 space. I just use 52. I kind of carve up my home network a little bit. And this is kind of just the lab part of it. But this directive here should make sense even if you're just reading it as not having been previously exposed to named. Listen on, makes sense, listen on port 53. 53 is the DNS port. And I'm going to listen on 127.0.0.1, and then I think actually I should put the host name. I think this is, yeah, I think I actually want to put in the actual host name. So listen on port 53 means listen on port 53, and then on localhost here, and then also on my public IP address. And then allow query simply means what interfaces I'm going to allow queries on. So generally you'd match it up, but I'm going to change the back here because I'm going to allow queries from anywhere on the 52 subnet. And then recursion, yes, I forget why that's in there. I have to look it up, but I mean, you want it in there because it allows for recursive queries, which I think you want in a case where you're you're acting as a master. Don't quote me on that. I should probably look it up. But anyway, that's the named conf option. Now let's go and look at named conf local. Now this is where we're going to actually declare our zones. We're not going to put in all the details. Here are the the DNS records you can look up, but we're going to declare what zones. And once again, I'm going to paste them in from my notes. Bam. Okay, so we've got prod.lowenbox and test.lowenbox. Not .com, just lowenbox is the top level domain. And this says, hey, we're going to be a master for these. And then this is where you'll find the information. Very simple file. So that's named.conf local. Now let's actually go in here. So now I need to set up prod.lowenbox.hosts and test.lowenbox.hosts. So let's do prod first. Once again, I'm going to copy and paste. So let's do prod.lowenbox.hosts. Bam. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going through all of this because this is generic DNS, named kind of stuff. We define the time to live. By the way, we could define that as 60 or 30 seconds, right? That's the beauty of being in charge of your own DNS server, right? Usually on the internet, it's often 3600 or 1 hour. That's specified in seconds. Because otherwise there would just be a constant flood of DNS traffic. What time to live means is that if I looked up example.lowenbox and I get the answer, that answer comes with the time to live. I'm not going to re-query it for another 30 seconds or so. Actually, I take that back. I'm misspeaking here. The time to live controls the DNS server's time to live. How often is it going to cache that before it goes and asks up the chain, right? So prod.lowenbox, in this case, will be there for 300 seconds before it was to ask up. Now, in this case, it doesn't really matter, but that's the time to live. So we're saying, hey, for prod.lowen.box, and again, I put a period here at the end. I want to just highlight that for you because when you're working with DNS, that's an important, it's important to keep track of those trailing periods. Otherwise, if you don't put in the trailing period, it appends the domain name. So if I didn't put that there, it'd actually be prod.lowenbox.lowenbox, which is not what we want. So for prod.lowenbox, this is the start of authority. Here's a name server. And someone.prod.box would be translated into someone@prod.lowenbox. That's an email address if someone had a need to contact us, etc. This first one here is a serial number. That's important. We just want to increment that whenever we change this file. And the rest of this, you can go look up on your own. But they're just various timeouts and time to live factors. So here I've defined my name server, and then I've thrown in, I've said actually, let's walk through these. Prod.lowenbox, it says, hey, your name server or an authoritative name server for this is DNS1.test. Whoops, I shouldn't say .test.prod.lowenbox. And then for DNS1.prod.lowenbox, that server, here's the address. And here's an example record I just threw in there so we'd have something to query. Now let's also set up test.lowenbox.hosts. And I'm going to dazzle you with my lightning fast typing ability again. There we go, look at that. All right, and I don't see any typos here, so I think this looks good. On this serial number, just to share kind of a convention, if you notice it's 2022-06-12 because I'm making this on June 12th. And I put an 01 at the end of it. You could actually just put a 1 in there, increment it next time to a 2, to a 3, etc. It's an old convention. Again, this convention goes back at least 30, if not 40 years, to use the date because 2022-06-12 will increment, right? If I come in tomorrow, it'll be 2022-06-13. So, and then I add this 01 so that if I want to, I can have an 02, an 03, 04 if I'm making updates during the day. It's a classic mistake with Bind to make all your changes and then not see that they don't show up. And you're like, why didn't it show up? Possibly two answers. One is you didn't tell named to reload its configuration files. We'll show you how to do that. And then second, you didn't increment the serial number. All right, so I've got, let's see if I got everything set up. I think so. So what I'm going to do here is say system control start named. No. And I'm going to go look in var log, daemon log. Let's see here. And I should just cat that. Bam. All zones loaded, running, etc. You'll see a variety of messages in here. In fact, this is all just startup messages. I mean, you can see there's just a whole lot that goes on there. I'm certainly not going to explain all of this. But if you look, you'll now see named running. Now, I mentioned telling named to reload its configuration files. If one way to do it is certainly just to do a system control restart named. It'll go out, shut down named, start it back up, and as part of that, it'll restart all of its configuration files. But what another option is to do a PSEF grep for named. Okay, so there's the named process. And what I can do now is I can say kill hup, the hup signal or hang-up signal 5466, which is the process ID here. That will tell named to read its I guess it doesn't actually put anything in the log, but that will tell named to go and reread its. Well, actually, here let's just test this. All right, so tail one. Well, we'll say 5 lines out of var log, daemon log. Let's do that. Probably shouldn't do a. I shouldn't do a bang kill. Let's do a grep for named and kill hup 5466, and let's tail again. And yeah, no, it doesn't actually put anything in there, but that is how you can force named to reload its configuration. Just be careful when you do that you don't actually, do this without the -hup, right? That just sends the term signal, and that will kill named, and that will stop your DNS resolution, so we don't want that. All right, let's take a look here. We've got named up and running. Let's try a DNS query. So first of all, one thing we can do, let's do an nmap on, let's see, my IP address list is 192.168.52.233. So let's do an nmap on that guy. Yep, there we go. You see port 53 is open and serving. Now that's, interestingly enough, that's port 53 TCP. UDP would also work here. I'm not sure why it says TCP there, but within the DNS world, UDP is overwhelmingly what's used. When you issue a query and say, tell me what example.com is, that's going over UDP. If you're doing a zone transfer, in other words, if you've got multiple DNS servers and they're transferring information back and forth, that is done over TCP. It's called a zone transfer. A little out of scope for today, but just throwing in some entertaining tidbits for you. All right, we're at the moment of truth. Does it work? Let's find out. I'm going to use the NS lookup utility, and I'm going to tell it, hey, for a server, use 127.0.0.1 localhost. And you know what? I've completely forgotten what we put in our file. So let's try this again. Okay, so NS lookup server 127.0.0.1. And now let's just give it a query. Example.prod.lownbox. Hey, there it is. There's the query. And again, not lownbox.com, lownbox. Now let's, just for completeness sake, let's do a 127.0.0.1 and let's look for example.test.lownbox. Yeah, there it is working. Okay, so on this system, we've got things set up properly. Now let's go to a different system. This is another VM. We were actually peeking at this earlier, and my resolve conf. Yeah, let's nuke some of this, and let's set this to 233. If we go back to our DNS server, as you may recall, yeah, that was our IP address, right? Okay, so I've said, hey, here in the etc resolve conf, that's the name server you want to use. So let's try it. NS lookup. Boy, my short-term memory just isn't working today. Example.test.lownbox. Bang! And I bet it'll work for prod as well. Cool. So it's working. What we've done is we've created a DNS server that serves .low-end-box, or just low-end-box is a top-level domain. Actually, I take that back. It serves prod.low-end-box and test.low-end-box. I could then go in and create however many hosts I want, put them on the DNS server, and every other host would be able to resolve that. Of course, I could create multiple DNS servers and use zone transfers to keep them in sync, but this is the basic idea here. Now, of course, to be clear, if it wasn't, if this is, first of all, this is on a private network, right? It's just here in my home, so no one outside of my home can get to these things. Therefore, no one's going to be able to talk to that DNS server unless you're inside my network here. Now, let's suppose you went and put this all on a VPS in the cloud. Would that work? Yes, it would. You could create, .low-end-box or whatever, that top-level domain, and create a DNS name server for it, and point your other VPSs to it for DNS, and it would resolve and it would work. The trick is, though, it would only work for you. It would not work for the general internet, right? If you wanted to work for the general internet, for anybody just to pick up their laptop or their phone and type in, example.prod.low-end-box and go to some server, that's when you got to pay that multiple hundred thousands of dollars to actually officially register a top-level domain, etc. But for your own private use, this would be a fun way to, first of all, to play, learn a little bit with DNS, and then also to really take ownership of your DNS needs. So this was just kind of a fun, off-the-cuff tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it. Again, thanks to Frank Z from Low End Talk, and that's a great example of the kind of conversations, knowledge sharing that we do there. If this is your first time on the channel or you've never visited our sites, I would encourage you to stop by lowendbox.com. Not lowendbox, just lowendbox.com, or lowendtalk.com, where we've got just fantastic offers on hosting. If you're looking for hosting, that's where you need to start, because we'll save you a ton of money. But on top of that, we've also got great tutorials, a lot of cartoons and memes, news. We've done some fantastic interviews with industry leaders, and underlying it all is our famously spirited discussion. So I'd invite you to come by and visit us at Low End Box or Low End Talk. And until we see you there, happy hosting.